Hi friends. We're back today to hear about our next chapter in the story Because of Winn Dixie, written by Kate DiCamillo and published by Scholastic Readers. Now, if you remember in chapter 6, today we're going to read chapter 7. In chapter 6, Opal, our friend Opal, met a new friend in her town. Can you remember who she met? She met the librarian, the lady who's in charge of the library. Remember? Do you remember her name? Her name is Miss Franny. That's right. Now, Opal, as we know, brings her dog, Winn Dixie, with her everywhere she goes. Do you remember why she brings Winn Dixie with her? Because Winn Dixie doesn't like to be left alone, does he? No! And what does he do when he's left alone? He whines and he yelps and he makes all kinds of noise. So the neighbors don't like that, do they? So Opal brings Winn Dixie with her when she goes somewhere, and she decided she wanted to go to the library. She brought Winn Dixie with her, but to be polite, she didn't bring Winn Dixie inside at first, because typically dogs are not allowed inside buildings, are they? So she came inside, had tied Winn Dixie up outside, but Winn Dixie got close enough to the building that he could put his paws up against the window ledge and peek his head up to the window to look in. Now, if you remember, Miss Franny looked over and saw Winn Dixie, but she didn't have a very good response, did she? How did she react or respond when she saw Winn Dixie at first? She was terrified. Why was she so afraid of little Winn Dixie? Look how cute that puppy is. Because she thought he was a bear. She thought Winn Dixie was a bear. Does Winn Dixie look like a bear to you? Maybe, kind of. He does have big ears. He does have big teeth and big eyes. Well, if you remember, Miss Franny had told Opal that she had an experience a long time ago with a bear where it scared her. So in chapter 7, she's going to tell us about that experience. We're going to find out what happened to Miss Franny and the real bear. Okay? So listen as we find out what happened to Miss Franny. Back when Florida was wild, when it consisted, that means when it was made up of, nothing but palmetto trees and mosquitoes so big they could fly away with you. Is that true? Is there a mosquito that could fly away with you? No. She's exaggerating. She's trying to make a point that back in the olden days, Florida wasn't quite such a nice place to live. It was a little bit rougher. Okay, so she's exaggerating. Miss Franny Block started in, and I was just a little girl, no bigger than you. My father, Herman W. Block, told me that I could have anything I wanted for my birthday. Anything at all. Miss Franny looked around the library. She leaned in close to me. I don't want to appear prideful, but my daddy was a very rich man. A very rich man. She nodded and then leaned back and said, and I was a little girl who loved to read. So I told him, I said, Daddy, I would most certainly love to have a library for my birthday. A small little library would be wonderful. You asked for a whole library? A small one, Miss Franny nodded. I wanted a little house full of nothing but books, and I wanted to share them too. And I got my wish. My father built me this house, the very one we are sitting in now, and at a very young age, I became a librarian. Yes, ma'am. What about the bear? I said. Did I mention that Florida was wild in those days? Miss Franny Black said. Uh-huh, you did. It was wild, and there were wild men and wild women and wild animals. Like bears? Yes, ma'am, that's right. Now, I have to tell you, I was the little Miss Know-it-all. I was a Miss Smarty Pants with my library full of books. Oh, yes, ma'am. I thought I knew the answers to everything. Well, one hot Thursday, I was sitting in my library with all the doors and windows open and my nose stuck in a book when a shadow crossed the desk. And without looking up, yes, ma'am, without even looking up, I said, "Is there a book I can help you find?" Well, there was no answer. And I thought it might have been a wild man or a wild woman, scared of all these books and afraid to speak up. And then I became aware of a very peculiar smell, a very strong smell. I raised my eyes slowly, and standing right in front of me was a bear. Yes, ma'am, a very large bear. How big? I asked. Oh, well, said Miss Franny, perhaps 3 times the size of your dog. 3 times bigger than Winn Dixie. Then what happened? I asked her. Well, said Miss Franny, I looked at him and he looked at me. He put his big nose up in the air and sniffed as if he was trying to decide if a little Miss Know-it-all librarian was what he was in the mood to eat. And I sat there, and then I thought, well, if this bear intends to eat me, I am not going to let it happen without a fight. No, ma'am. So very slowly and very carefully, I raised up the book I was reading. What book was that? I asked. Why, it was War and Peace, a very large book. I raised it up slowly, and then I aimed it carefully, and I threw it right at that bear and screamed, "Be gone!" And do you know what? No, ma'am, I said. He went. But this is what I will never forget. He took that book with him. "Nuh-uh," I said. "Yes, ma'am," said Franny. He snitched it and snatched it and ran away. Did he come back? I asked. No, I never saw him again. Well, the men in town used to tease me about it. They used to say, "Miss Franny, we saw that bear of yours out in the woods today. He was reading that book and he said it sure was good. And would it be all right if he kept it for just another week?" Yes, ma'am, they did tease me about it. She sighed. I imagine I'm the only one left from those days. I imagine I'm the only one that even recalls, that means remembers, that bear. All my friends, everyone I knew when I was young, they're all dead and gone. She sighed again. She looked sad and old and wrinkled. It was the same way I felt sometimes, being friendless. That means not having any friends. In a new town and not having a mama to comfort me. I sighed too. Winn Dixie raised his head off his paws and looked back and forth between me and Miss Franny. He sat up then and showed Miss Franny his teeth. "Well now, look at that," she said. "That dog is smiling at me." "It's a talent of his," I told her. "It's a fine talent," Miss Franny said. "A very fine talent." And she smiled back at Winn Dixie. We could be friends, I said to Miss Franny. I mean, you and me and Winn Dixie, and we could all be friends. Miss Franny smiled even bigger. Why, that would be grand, she said. Just grand. And right at that minute, right when the three of us had decided to be friends, who should come marching into the Herman W. Block Memorial Library but old pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson. She walked right up to Miss Franny's desk and said, I just finished Johnny Tremaine and I enjoyed it very much. I would like something more difficult to read now because I am an advanced reader. Yes, dear, I know, said Miss Franny. She got up out of her chair. Amanda pretended like I wasn't there. She stared right past me. Are dogs allowed in the library? She asked Miss Franny as they walked away. Certain ones, said Miss Franny. A select few. And then she turned around and winked at me. I smiled back. I had just made my first friend in Naomi, and nobody was going to mess that up for me. Not even old pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson.